Europe believed armies shaped history. But in the early 19th century, something far quieter began rewriting the continent: information and the men who controlled its flow. Three brothers, three cities, one financial web that moved faster than kings, ministers, or entire governments. Frankfurt was the brain. Vienna was the shield. Naples was the southern gate. From these 3 points, an invisible network emerged: a system of letters, couriers, coded reports, currency movements, and diplomatic messages that no empire could match in speed or precision. While Nathan shook London's markets and James reshaped Parisian finance, their lesser-known brothers were doing something equally critical. They were making the network unbreakable. Amschel guarded the family's archives and accounts, the central intelligence library of Europe. Salomon became the financial right-hand of emperors, guiding the Habsburg treasury through crises. Karl unlocked the power corridors of southern Europe, securing Rome, Naples, and the Mediterranean trade routes. Together, they formed the unseen architecture of the Rothschild machine, a structure so efficient that entire nations became dependent on its stability. This is the story of the three brothers history rarely names. Yet without them, the dynasty could never have ruled time, money, and information. After Nathan in London and Salomon in Vienna reshaped the financial core of Europe, the dynasty's power still lacked its full structure. A true continent-wide network required more than brilliant financiers. It needed stability, communication, and influence extending into every political climate. That foundation would be formed by the remaining three brothers: Amschel in Frankfurt, Karl in Naples, and James in Paris. Each stood at a different corner of Europe, yet together they created the silent framework that made the Rothschild empire unbreakable. Amschel, the eldest, became the custodian of discipline and accuracy. From Frankfurt, he safeguarded the family's archives, master ledgers, and intelligence reports, ensuring that every decision across 5 cities aligned with one unified strategy. Karl took command of Naples, a volatile region of southern courts, papal politics, and Mediterranean trade routes. His work secured influence over kingdoms and supply chains often overlooked by northern powers, yet essential to Europe's flow of capital. James, the youngest but exceptionally skilled, transformed Paris into a financial powerhouse, balancing diplomacy with aggressive investment. Together, these three brothers formed the unseen skeleton of the dynasty, the pillars that allowed Nathan and Salomon's bold operations to reshape Europe without ever collapsing. Frankfurt was not Europe's richest city, nor its most glamorous, yet it became the Rothschild dynasty's central nervous system because Amschel ruled it with absolute precision. As the eldest brother, he inherited not only their father's discipline, but also his obsession with record-keeping, coded correspondence, and financial clarity. While Nathan and Salomon maneuvered through political storms, Amschel ensured the entire machine operated without a single miscalculation. Every courier from London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples delivered reports, first checked, copied, and archived under Amschel's supervision. Exchange rates, commodity prices, troop movements, diplomatic whispers, all were meticulously catalogued in Frankfurt's ledgers. This archive became the dynasty's long-term advantage, a memory bank that governments did not possess. Amschel's personality shaped the city's role. He avoided public attention, stayed close to the Judengasse roots, and built stability rather than spectacle. Through him, Frankfurt remained the family's anchor, the place where money was reconciled, strategies coordinated, and risks measured. He rarely issued bold commands, yet every brother relied on his judgment. Without Amschel's order, the network's speed and power would have fractured. His quiet discipline transformed Frankfurt into the intellectual capital of Europe's first private financial empire. While Northern Europe buzzed with industrial growth and political reform, the Mediterranean remained a complex mosaic of kingdoms, papal interests, and fragile alliances. Into this unpredictable landscape, the Rothschilds placed Karl, trusting him to secure the dynasty's southern flank. Naples was not London or Paris. It was a crossroads of merchants, monarchs, and church power, where influence depended less on markets and more on relationships. Karl quickly mastered this environment. He cultivated ties with the Bourbon monarchy, stabilized their debt, and gained access to ports vital for grain, metals, and shipping routes. But his most consequential achievement came through Rome. Negotiations with the Vatican that positioned the Rothschilds as the unofficial bankers of the Papal States. Controlling church finances meant more than profit. It granted visibility into political decisions long before they became public. In Naples, Karl monitored Mediterranean gold flows, naval movements, and trade disruptions that could ripple through Europe. His reports enabled Nathan, James, and Salomon to adjust investments faster than rival houses ever could. Though often overshadowed by his brother's fame, Karl's influence anchored the dynasty to the south. Without his command of this region, the Rothschild network would have been a three-legged table, tall, impressive, but dangerously unstable. Among the five brothers, James was the youngest, yet in Paris, he built one of the dynasty's most powerful strongholds. Unlike the discipline of Frankfurt or the complex court politics of Naples, Paris was an entirely different arena, a place where fashion, culture, politics, and finance sat at the same table. James adapted to this world effortlessly. His charisma, rapid decision-making, and appetite for calculated risk made him a natural fit among France's elite. From the moment he arrived, James did far more than banking. He reshaped the city's economic foundations, modernizing government bonds, financing major industrial projects, and playing a critical role in France's post-war recovery. Under his influence, Paris evolved into a financial center capable of challenging London itself. Diplomacy became another of his tools. Ministers, royal circles, and even rival banking houses recognized the value of his insight. Through these relationships, he secured the Rothschild network a level of uninterrupted power in France that few foreign families had ever achieved. Despite his youth, James's Paris operation influenced the balance of Europe. He was the fastest thinker in the network, and he transformed Paris into the dynasty's brightest front line. The true strength of the Rothschild empire did not lie solely in gold reserves or political connections. It lay in speed. While European governments relied on slow diplomatic couriers, the three brothers created a communication web that moved with unprecedented precision. From Frankfurt, Naples, and Paris, each maintained a network of private messengers, coded letters, and predetermined relay stations designed to reduce every delay that weakened state intelligence. Austerlitz, Leipzig, Waterloo. Wars shifted the balance of Europe, yet the Rothschilds often learned outcomes hours or even days before ministers received official reports. Karl's Mediterranean agents tracked naval deployments. James's Paris office monitored governmental rumors and financial sentiment. Amschel cross-checked everything against market signals and long-term intelligence patterns. Their letters traveled on horseback, by coastal schooner, even by specially paid riders who bypassed tolls and borders. Every brother knew that information decayed with each passing minute, and so they built a system where time itself became their competitive weapon. Governments debated, armies marched, diplomats hesitated, but the Rothschild network acted. This speed allowed them to buy, sell, lend, or withdraw before anyone else understood the direction of events. In an era when power seemed to belong to monarchs, these three brothers quietly proved that whoever controlled information controlled Europe. By the 1820s, the Rothschild network operated with a cohesion that most European governments envied. While states struggled with slow bureaucracy, shifting ministers, and fragile alliances, the three brothers maintained a structure built on discipline, speed, and unbroken trust. Amschel provided stability from Frankfurt, Karl controlled the southern gateways through Naples, and James injected Paris with relentless momentum. Their coordination made the network nearly indestructible. When revolutions shook Italy, Karl redirected funds within hours. When French markets panicked, James reinforced them with strategic lending. And when information from any capital conflicted, Amschel verified it through Frankfurt's archives before decisions were made. This unity allowed the family to act as a single organism across thousands of miles. Borders, wars, and political crises slowed nations. But they did not slow the Rothschilds. Their web had become stronger than many of the kingdoms they served. The most powerful line inside the Rothschild network ran between Paris and Frankfurt. James generated momentum, bold investments, rapid market moves, and constant political negotiation, while Amschel provided the discipline to keep every decision grounded in data. Their correspondence was relentless. Prices, rumors, diplomatic updates, even shifts in public mood flowed between the two cities with machine-like regularity. When James prepared a major transaction, he waited for Amschel's confirmation. When Amschel detected a risk, James adjusted instantly. This balance of impulse and restraint allowed the family to outmaneuver rivals who acted on incomplete or delayed information. The Paris-Frankfurt axis became the network's heartbeat. France supplied the opportunities. Frankfurt supplied the clarity. Together, they created a decision engine that no other banking house could match. Karl's greatest strength in Naples was not simply lending money. It was information control across the Mediterranean. From Sicily to Rome, from merchant ports to diplomatic circles, he built a network of agents who reported on everything that could influence markets. Grain shortages, naval deployments, papal decisions, and shifting alliances among Italian states. These reports arrived faster than official channels, giving the Rothschilds advance warning of crises that could shake Europe. When storms threatened shipping routes, Karl alerted his brothers before insurers reacted. When the Papal States negotiated quietly with foreign powers, he captured the whispers long before ambassadors confirmed them. Karl's Mediterranean intelligence web transformed southern Europe into a strategic advantage. It allowed the dynasty to predict movements, price risk more accurately, and act while others were still waiting for news. Naples became not just a branch, but a listening post for the entire empire. Unlike his brothers, James understood that in France, public perception shaped markets as much as government policy. Paris was a city where rumors could collapse a bond issue, and confidence alone could revive an entire sector. James mastered this environment by studying newspapers, cafes, political salons, and the moods of influential circles. He knew when to lend boldly and when to withhold support, not just from numbers, but from sensing shifts in public sentiment. Rivals often acted on official statements. James acted on the energy of the city itself. His ability to read France's emotional climate allowed the Rothschild house to stabilize markets during crises and profit when others hesitated. Through this mastery of perception, James turned Paris into an arena where the dynasty didn't just react to events, it shaped them. While James and Karl operated in fast-changing political climates, Amschel's Frankfurt remained the dynasty's anchor. His power came not from spectacle, but from precision. Every letter, account, and intelligence report from the other four cities was verified, copied, and stored under his oversight. He created a system where no number existed without context, and no decision was made without historical comparison. This discipline protected the family from internal chaos. When markets shifted unpredictably, Amschel checked decades of data to identify patterns before advising his brothers. When a crisis erupted, he coordinated liquidity flows to keep all branches aligned. Frankfurt's stability was intentional. Amschel wanted a city where noise could not distort judgment. His quiet rigor formed the backbone of the entire empire, a strength that allowed the network to act confidently, even in Europe's most turbulent years. Behind the Rothschild brothers' success was a system few outsiders ever saw: their private courier network. While governments relied on slow diplomatic messengers, the brothers employed riders, coded letters, and prearranged relay points stretching from Paris to Naples, Frankfurt to London. These couriers traveled day and night, paid generously to bypass tolls, borders, and delays that crippled state communication. Information that took ministries days to receive often reached the Rothschilds in hours. A military defeat, a royal decree, a shift in commodity prices, all arrived through their private channels long before newspapers printed the news. This speed gave the brothers a weapon more powerful than gold: time. They could buy before markets reacted, lend before states panicked, and reposition assets before rivals even understood what was happening. The courier network was not just a tool, it was the pulse of the empire. By the late 1820s, Europe faced recurring waves of political unrest: revolutions, royal disputes, collapsing ministries. Most banking houses reacted with fear, withdrawing funds and freezing operations. The Rothschilds, however, possessed something others lacked: a multi-city network that protected itself. When turmoil struck Paris, James shifted liquidity through Frankfurt before panic spread. When Naples faced instability, Karl rerouted payments through Vienna or London. Every brother had the ability to compensate for another's pressure point, turning regional crises into manageable events rather than existential threats. This internal balancing act made the Rothschild system uniquely resilient. No single city could destroy it. No local disaster could cripple the whole. The network didn't just move money, it absorbed shocks, protecting the dynasty while competitors fell. For the first time, Europe witnessed a banking empire that could withstand storms that toppled kingdoms. Though united by purpose, James and Karl represented two very different strategic styles within the network. James excelled in fast, aggressive environments, Parisian markets, political salons, and industrial investments that rewarded boldness. His strength was momentum: quick reading, quick acting, and shaping public perception before rivals understood the trend. Karl, by contrast, operated in a slower, more fragile world. Naples required patience, negotiation, and long-term loyalty. His influence grew not from publicity, but from quiet agreements with monarchs, bishops, and merchants who valued stability over speed. Yet this contrast was precisely what strengthened the dynasty. James generated opportunity. Karl secured continuity. Together, they gave the Rothschild network both velocity and endurance, a rare combination in Europe's volatile financial landscape. While his younger brothers chased opportunities across Europe, Amschel specialized in something far less visible, but far more vital: preventing risks before they emerged. From Frankfurt, he monitored exchange rates, political tensions, commodity shortages, and even seasonal trade patterns. His reports rarely predicted profits. They prevented losses. Amschel's method was simple but powerful. Compare every new situation with decades of archived data. If a pattern resembled a past crisis, he alerted his brothers instantly. James slowed investments. Carl tightened credit. Nathan adjusted London's positions. Thanks to Amschel, the dynasty avoided disasters that destroyed rival banks. His caution didn't limit the network. It protected its foundation. He turned risk prevention into an art form, making Frankfurt the quiet guardian of the entire empire. Despite operating in vastly different environments, Frankfurt, Paris, and Naples often functioned like a single organism. Each brother filtered information through his own lens. James through market psychology, Carl through political undercurrents, Amschel through historical data. But when a major decision was required, their perspectives converged into one coordinated response. A war scare in Italy could trigger preparations in Paris within hours. A financial rumor in France could be verified in Frankfurt before markets opened. A trade disruption in the Mediterranean could reshape credit flows across the entire network. This harmony was not accidental. It was engineered through constant communication and absolute trust. The three cities didn't just share information, they shared intention, allowing the dynasty to act with a unity no government could match. While financial strength defined the Rothschild name, the brothers understood that cultural influence could open doors money alone could not. In Paris, James supported artists, salons, and social circles that shaped public taste and political conversation. In Naples, Carl cultivated relationships with patrons, musicians, and intellectuals tied to the royal court. Even Amschel, the most reserved, backed educational and community projects that elevated the family's standing in Frankfurt. This soft power expanded the dynasty's reach beyond banks and ministries. Cultural prestige made their presence acceptable, even desirable, in places where foreign financiers were often unwelcome. Through art, philanthropy, and social engagement, the brothers built an invisible layer of influence, one that softened resistance, attracted allies, and quietly strengthened their position across Europe. Most banking houses feared political crises, but the Rothschild brothers often emerged from them stronger. Revolts in Italy pushed Carl to redesign credit routes, making Naples more resilient. Economic tension in France forced James to refine his bond strategies, increasing Paris's dominance. And every disturbance provided Amschel with new data, sharpening Frankfurt's ability to predict future risks. Instead of being paralyzed, the network adapted with each shock. What weakened competitors refined the Rothschild system, proving its flexibility across cultures, governments, and economies. Crises revealed something essential. The dynasty's strength was not just wealth, but its ability to transform instability into strategic advantage. Through turbulence, the brothers learned how to survive and how to lead. Despite operating across different nations, the brothers followed a strict internal discipline that set them apart from every rival house in Europe. They avoided unnecessary publicity, kept personal lifestyles modest, and maintained absolute confidentiality in both business and correspondence. No contract was finalized without consulting the others. No risk was taken without cross-checking information across the network. This consistency created a unified identity, 5 branches, but one voice. Competitors expanded recklessly, chasing prestige and political favor, while the Rothschilds moved deliberately, guided by data, memory, and shared purpose. Their discipline protected them from ego-driven mistakes and shielded the network from fragmentation. It ensured that whether in Frankfurt, Paris, or Naples, every brother acted not as an individual banker, but as a guardian of a single growing empire. By the early 1830s, European governments realized the Rothschilds were no longer just bankers. They were a stabilizing force nations relied upon. When treasury reserves ran low, ministers contacted James before drafting proposals. When Italian courts faced uncertainty, Karl's assurances calmed entire markets, and when conflicting reports reached capitals, Amschel's verified data often settled the matter. Slowly, a pattern emerged. States hesitated until the Rothschilds acted. Their decisions influenced currency values, borrowing costs, and even diplomatic confidence. Rival banks watched their moves before making their own, and politicians began measuring policies by how the network would respond. Europe had learned a new reality. The Rothschild name didn't follow events. It moved them. By the time the 1830s drew to a close, the roles of Amschel, James, and Karl had become unmistakably clear. Together, they transformed a family enterprise into Europe's first truly interconnected financial empire. Amschel provided memory, structure, and discipline. James supplied momentum, innovation, and influence. Karl secured the Mediterranean, the church, and the southern political corridors. Their strengths did not compete. They completed one another. While Nathan and Salomon shaped headlines in London and Vienna, it was these three brothers who ensured the empire's stability. They built the foundations, maintained the balance, and kept the network functioning as a single organism across borders, languages, and crises. In the end, their legacy was simple yet unmatched. They made the Rothschild power unbreakable,